Well, hello, freedom seekers. I am here about 15 to 20 minutes later than what I want to be, but I'm still here before my end time limit, which is 8:30 on Monday evening. And that is coming to you from my home in Ventura, California, on the Pacific coast of the United States, for those of you who are around the world and aren't sure where Ventura is. And so we've just been having a wonderful, wonderful summer here. I hope that your summer is going well. And yes, this is my weekly wrap up where I come and talk with you about how my transition, and it's also a transformation in the whole process of my transforming and my transitioning to creating an online income, is very similar to the process and the steps that I went through in going after 27 years of monogamy and going from a monogamous life to having an open marriage, where then I could enjoy the rich delights of a wonderful sex life with many people, not just with one person. In fact, you probably have heard this before from me, but the sex life with that one person was not good. It was never good. Some people talk about how, that their sex life is great until they get married. And then once they get married, it seems to kind of start to slide downhill. Well, in my case, I was a virgin when I got married, and so was my wife. And so there wasn't a situation where it was all great. We had talked about, wanting to have, after we got married, wanting to have just this tremendous and this great sex life. It just never happened. And from my standpoint, I thought that there was just something where I couldn't figure out. I didn't know what I was doing. And my wife, from her standpoint, she just thought that she was broken and there was something wrong with her, because I could not turn my wife on. She was not interested in sex with me. She would have sex with me for 3 times a week for about 10 to 15 minutes. Basically she would then lay there in bed and say, okay, hurry up and do me. And just so that I could have some release. And she felt that was her wifely Christian duty, or Christian wifely duty. It was to make sure that I had a place to have a release in. And so, that really reduced her to just an awful, awful state. And it wasn't good for her self-image, or her, what I refer to as her id. As Freud calls it, I think it is. Freud came up with the concept of our id. And it wasn't good for mine. And after about, when we got married, on our honeymoon, she laid in bed and we had sex, and she told me that night, she says, I want you to always have sex as much as you want and as often as you want. And so that night, we had sex 8 times through the night, and it was, I thought, pretty good. It was good for me, but, it just really didn't do anything for her. She never had an orgasm. I really didn't know anything about a woman having an orgasm. I knew nothing about that. And so she didn't have an orgasm, and it was, like I said, it was pleasant for me. It was my wedding night, my first time ever having sex. And so I thought it was pretty good, but it didn't take her too long to just lose all of her interest, where she went from that idea where she just wanted me to have all the sex that I ever wanted, and always to be there for me so that I could have all the sex I ever wanted. But see, that she just figured that sex was okay. Yeah, I lay in bed for 10 minutes and he does me, and that's it. And then it's over. That's kind of what I think what her thinking was about it all. And even though, again, we talked about her and my orgasms, and before we got married, and when we talked about these things and know that we wanted to really please each other, it just, for some reason, it didn't go down that road. And so a couple years, about 2 years into our relationship, well, I remember even, it was, in fact, this was about 2 years into our relationship. I just finally had it with, 10 minutes 3 times a week, and really just not a lot of pleasure to it. She didn't want my attention. She didn't want me touching her and trying to turn her on. She didn't want anything like that. And so I was growing more and more frustrated by the week and by the month as it went by. And so after about 2 years, we had our first real argument. It wasn't a yelling and screaming type event or anything like that, but it was definitely an argument. And we had our first argument, and it was because I was just so pent up and frustrated sexually that I says, we got to do something here. In fact, I remember that during that argument, I remember calling her mom and saying to her mom, says, "Can I return her to you?" I was so frustrated. And so anyway, we went from there, and we decided that we better get some counseling. And that was 2 years into our relationship. And so we went off to the church, because we were religious, and we went off to the church and we got some counseling. Well, first by the church pastor, and that didn't get us anywhere. And he referred us on to a Christian counseling agency. And so we started getting counseling from a Christian counseling agency. And so we kind of went through that for about a year, and then nothing happened. And so a couple more years went by, and we were at the point of being married for 5 years, and wanted to celebrate a 5-year anniversary. And for me, that meant I wanted to celebrate having great sex. That wasn't quite her idea of a celebration. And so not during our anniversary, but at some point after the 5th anniversary, again, I had one of my little episodes where I was, noticeably very unhappy and frustrated about our sex life. That's the only thing we were married for 34 years. It was the only thing in 34 years that we ever really had arguments about. And so, that came up again. And so we says, okay, well, we came up with a new plan. We tried counseling, went that route. So let's try something else. And so about every 2 to 3 years, we would do that. We'd come up with a new plan and we'd try something else. Maybe you've been through something like that yourself, because you see, I was always taught, and I don't know about you, but I was always taught that relationships take a lot of work. And I was taught that by working hard, you can make things work and get the life that you want. Well, if that were the case, then there'd be a lot of people out there that would be billionaires, just like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos and Tim McCaw and many other people that are billionaires today, because I don't think that a lot of them worked any harder than the guy on a jackhammer out there busting up the street. And so, but that's what we're taught. And is to just, we just got to work hard. And so my wife and I, we worked hard, and every 2 to 3, sometimes 4 years would go by, we'd come up with a new plan. And those plans over a period of 25 years ended up costing me over $50,000. We'd go off to retreats, and we'd go off to doctors to get medical testing done, and just all kinds of things. The most expensive thing that we did is we spent about a year and a half with woman who got her doctorate in being a sexologist, and she's in Seattle. Was in Seattle. She was a highly acclaimed, went and did a lot of speaking events at conferences for sex therapists and things of this nature. So she was, well recognized, well known in that field, and so we thought, okay, maybe she'll be able to help us, but in fact it's funny looking back. She's actually she normally her focus is non-monogamy. But when people, particularly a paying client, comes to her door, and she's not going to say, well, no, I can't help you. And so instead, she sits us down. The first session was like, okay, well, what are your goals here? We're going to talk about your goals. And tonight we'll just talk about that and kind of sort some things through with you. But then I'm going to give you a homework assignment, because my wife and I went as a couple to our first session. And then I'm going to give you a homework assignment. And you're each going to go home, and you're going to really sit down, and you're going to think about and write down what your goal is that you want to accomplish from these therapy sessions. And so then the following week, my wife went in for an appointment and had a session. Now these sessions they're 50-minute sessions, and they're $150. And so my wife went in for a session and kind of went over her stuff. I then had an appointment where I did the same and went over my stuff. And then together as a couple, we went in for an appointment, and we talked about our goals together, with the therapist kind of guiding us and what have you. So that week cost me, because my wife, she didn't work or anything like that, but it cost me $450 for that week. And so then it went from there to then going every week, where we'd either have a couples session, or we'd have individual sessions, or we would have individual and couple sessions. So it cost me at least $150 minimally a week, and some weeks it cost me as much as $450, except for the weeks that she also at one point suggested that maybe it would be helpful to us if we went and had a breathing coach to teach us how to do erogenous breathing. And so she referred us to a friend of hers that could teach us that. And so then he ended up having a session every week with us as well. And so that was an extra $150 for him until we went through his program. And so over the course of a year and a half, I ended up spending a little over $30,000 on all of that therapy. And you'd think that maybe that it would have done some good. But no, it didn't, and that doesn't surprise me really. I look around us and see people who go to therapy sessions and counseling sessions and hypnosis and these kinds of things, and they just keep going, and I didn't understand this years ago, but with all the training that Kat and I have gotten on being coaches, using the processes that we have learned, where it's just very effective, very impactful in a person's life, doesn't create dependence, and it's very fast. And you see in this, because that our lives, that we now know, for a long time we knew that there was a conscious brain and a subconscious brain. And but now they have also discovered, and actually has started being written about over 100 years ago by a few people, but most people wrote them off as being crazy and didn't believe there was such a thing. But the third thing is, now that we know and has been proven, that there is a superconscious. The superconscious comes to us when it comes to us through our DNA. It's where our innate intelligence, and it's where our internal genius lies. It's where the slut that is within all of us is. And so it's the superconscious that if you're really wanting to tap in and get fast results, you got to tap into the superconscious. The conscious mind, conscious memory, it doesn't like change. In fact, if anything that you end up wanting to change, it's going to resist. And the reason it's going to resist that is because when there's change, that old part of you, that old thing about you that's changing, that part has got to die and it's got to go away. And the conscious mind doesn't want change. It's just there to keep everything the same, exactly the same. And so therefore, there's when you're working in hypnosis and therapy, psychology and therapy, and these different modalities of change like this, meditation is another modality. NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is another one of these modalities. They all work on the conscious mind. Now, can they work? Yes, they can. They don't always work. Oftentimes they don't. But if it is going to work, it works by just repetition and time, taking a lot of time. And that's why then, like my wife and I, we saw the therapist, and when we started, we knew that we were in for at least minimally 1 year of therapy. And after a year and a half, we finally decided that we just really, that wasn't working for us. And, you know, and in fact, funny though, because that was then with that therapist, it was probably, that was around, I'm trying to remember how long we had been married at that point, but it was about 10 to 15 years later when we decided, hey, let's give therapy another try. Maybe all we need is, we just need a different therapist this time. And so we went off to another therapist. Now, we had done the same thing with counselors, you know, well, maybe we just need a different counselor. So we went off to different counselors. And so this time, maybe we just need a different therapist. And we went off to a different therapist. And this time, at this point, then my life is, I'm living a non-monogamous life. And so we went off as a threesome to therapy. It was myself and my wife and my girlfriend, it's my Seattle girlfriend, Chris. And so the three of us then all went to therapy. And Chris had insurance, and her insurance covered it all, 100%. And so, you know, we just thought, well, let's take advantage of that, you know, and let's give that a try. And the funny thing is, though, that was, interestingly enough, that's where then our last therapy session was, it was on Labor Day weekend. My birthday's September 1st. And so on Labor Day weekend, this 1 year, we had all gone camping. My wife and her boyfriend and Chris and myself, and then Chris's son. And we all went camping, and I knew since early August that things were brewing and things weren't what they should be, because in July I knew that, because you see in June my wife and I celebrated our 33rd anniversary. And as we do every year, when we would celebrate our anniversary, we'd take a week to have just for the two of us. We'd go on walks and we'd do things together, so that during that week we'd have a review and talk about where we are with our lives personally, where we are as a couple. And my wife, she had fallen in love with this guy, and so with her falling in love with this guy, it was the first time really I think that she had ever been in love. Her parents did not model love for her. When she married me, she didn't marry me for love. She married me because I was the practical choice. I was the best choice that she figured that she would get in a husband. And I didn't know that at the time, but I now know that. And so, you know, then seeing her fall in love was wonderful. I enjoyed that. In fact, it was when 2 times she broke up with him. And so we sat down and we talked about it all, you know, and you know, I basically talked her into kind of a little bit of reason because she wasn't being reasonable. And so I talked her in a little bit, having a little bit of reason and maybe being able to talk this through with her boyfriend so that they could work it out. And so she would end up going back to him, and sure enough, then they'd talk things through and they'd be back together. Well, so then there we were in June. We celebrated our 33rd anniversary. And then July, well, then at that point, I had 2 nights a week because I had at that point, I had like my wife and 3 other girlfriends. And yes, my wife and 3 other girlfriends. And every one of the people that we were in relationship with, they all knew that the only thing that my wife and I really asked for is that we would have 2 nights between the 2 of us, just for me and my wife to spend together without any of our other people and partners. We didn't all live together or anything like that. Well, but her boyfriend wouldn't respect that. And her boyfriend would come over and they all knew what 2 nights of the week that was. We didn't change it, and with very rare exception when we had to, and then everybody knew. But they all knew it was the same 2 nights every week. But her boyfriend wouldn't respect those 2 nights, and he would barge into the home and on those 2 nights, and so I had 2 different conversations with him, saying that he's got to respect our relationship, and he got to respect me by not showing up on those 2 nights. Well, he didn't seem to listen to me, and since I'm not in a relationship with him, then it was really my wife's responsibility at that point to make sure that she told and worked it out with him so that he wasn't barging in on our nights. And so it was in July then, the first part of July, I had a little conversation with my wife and said, hey, you've got to work this out with him so that he's not coming into our home on our nights. And so there was just this huge shift in energy at that point. Now, one of the difficulties my wife always had was with communication, and she didn't like to have communication that was totally going to create some conflict and things like this. And so I don't know what was going on and such, but I just knew that something didn't seem right. And that went through July and then went through August. Didn't seem to get any better. And so on the way to driving for our camping trip for Labor Day weekend, I just knew that something wasn't quite right. And so I thought to myself, the weekend would be interesting because my wife was going to then tent it up with her boyfriend and stay with her boyfriend. And then I was going to tent it up and stay with my girlfriend. And something just though, it'd be interesting to see how the weekend goes, I thought to myself. And so then the weekend passed, and on Monday, my wife and her boyfriend headed back home, and Chris and I stayed an extra day. So that was on Tuesday, and then we head back home on Tuesday, and I don't remember now if it was Wednesday or Thursday that we had our therapy with the therapist, and so there we went, and the 3 of us were there. On that night then, and my wife said to the therapist, says, can I just talk to you, just you and me alone? And so the therapist, that was the first time that situation ever had come up. And so she says, well, I don't normally like to operate in those ways, but I want to at least find out what you have that you feel like you need to talk about. And so Chris and I left the room and left my wife in there with a therapist. And it wasn't too long before then that we were invited back into the room. And the therapist says, Mark, Lisa has something that she would like to tell you or say to you or something like that. And so I turned to Lisa to listen to her. And she says, yeah, well, I'm changing direction in my life and my future does not include you. And so, that was then the last time that we saw the therapist, and not needed to go back to a therapist since. But so the point of this, though, is that, we do these things and we hope that things are going to get better. But I've learned now, because that you're dealing with the subconscious mind, part of the mind, and so often therapy and counseling and these things that we're told to do, work hard on your relationship. That's just not true as to what it takes. Hard work does not make things, make your dream life come to reality. Otherwise, those guys out there, jackhammers or whatever it is that you do, some of you don't have, hard, your life is not hard work. Other of you, it is hard work, and I certainly have had a lot of hard work in my life. And otherwise, why is it then that we don't have more of the dream life that we desire? And so I'm going to go ahead then and be talking to you now. Then I'm going to switch to my document that I always use, and I'm going to continue talking about this, but also then kind of be at the same time talking about giving you a report on my own transition, because I'm not transitioning my life at this point from monogamy to non-monogamy. My first wife, she divorced me, and then after 7 months after the divorce, 6 months, something like that, maybe even 5. Let's see, September, October, November, December, January, February. 6 months after the divorce, she died of cancer. And which she didn't see that coming, but it came and it got her. Just like the COVID-19 virus is coming and getting people now, although that's even faster. The people are dying from that. So at any rate, and so I'm going to then go ahead and talk to you about how the transition in my life right now from a traditional income where I'm trading my time for money, my time for dollars, much like many of you, where I'm really transitioning my income so I can have an abundant life with an online income. So with an online income, then my income is not dependent on being, I guess another way that they call it now these days is location independent income. Other people have called it the laptop lifestyle. You see, so that way I can go ahead and have the enjoyment of traveling around the world and not be stuck in one place. Because yes, I'm going to have to be continuing to work and make an income for quite a number of years yet. And so let me go ahead and share my screen with you and switch over to this other screen. In just a moment, I've got to click on a couple buttons here. I get a little better at this every week, but I'm not well practiced at it, that's for sure. Okay, if I was well practiced at it, it would be boom, boom, and it'd be done. Okay, so our weekly wrap-up video report, transforming your life, helping you transition and thrive in an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life of your choosing. It's not a life that I tell you how to figure out and work out, but we help you to design that life. Choose the life, design the life that you choose. Kind of like when you build a house, you start out creating a design. If it's a custom design, you create a life or a design for it, and then you have to make choices. Can you imagine if when you gone to build your own dream custom house and you got one choice for everything? That's it, just one choice. Well, as a matter of fact, I think that's kind of like building a life of monogamy. Isn't that true? And people who build a monogamous life is just like that. And so we want to help you to have more choices. And with those choices, then we want you to take a chance on your dreams to have more sex with more people more often. Now, Kat and I, as I mentioned a few moments ago, that we've gotten a lot of training this past year on some things that I have been training on my whole life, but we've got some really focused, concentrated training on some processes that we have learned that work with the superconscious mind. These processes have been all pioneered by a gentleman out of Australia that I've been fortunate to have become. He's now my mentor and my coach. And well, he's not my coach. My coach is in Germany, but he mentored my coach as well. And he just can't coach everybody. But he's my mentor. He's my trainer, but he is certified and trained, both Kat and I, in some very special processes. And those processes then help us to be able to work with that super conscious that I told you about. And in working with that super conscious, then we can help you to create change in your life very quickly. Whatever you may be experiencing, if you're experiencing jealousy, we can help you to end that in a period of a week. If you're experiencing anxiety about just, maybe you get anxious and tremendous anxiety about public speaking, or maybe who knows how many other things. Maybe you get anxiety when you have to go and approach a good-looking woman or a good-looking man. Maybe you get anxiety when you have to be around if you have a partner and you're living a non-monogamous life. Maybe you get an anxiety when you have to be around your partner's lover. And so there's lots of different things that come up, and these all have to do with the conscious brain that keeps us stuck. And it's hard for that conscious brain then to change. And so we have now got a process that we are certified and trained. In fact, there's less than 150 people in the world that is certified and trained from these processes of tapping into the super conscious, and we call it recoding, but it's rewiring your brain. And we actually have actual proof on camera of a video that's taken showing that rewiring process, where the neurons in the brain are moving around the brain, and then you can see the moment they come together and create a new connection in the brain, and that is new learning, something that's changed in the brain. And so we actually can take now with our processes, we can help that to happen. And so since love, sex, relationships are such a huge part of our life, a large part of what we do in our coaching practice and using these special processes is to help people create a life that they love the most. And that is helping them to create the love, the sex, the relationships that really get them stoked up about their life, so that when they get up in the morning, they are excited because they know it's going to be another great day full of love, full of great sex with the relationships they create. And so, when you think about it, though, we all create a lot of complication in our life. We create that complication in all manner of ways, and we create that through our attachment to stuff. Oftentimes, we've got to go out there and have that new car. We've got to go out there and have the bigger house. We've got to go out and do a lot of things, and that creates us having to do things and spend more time than what we want in making a living. Now, I went into that a little bit last week, and I'm not going to go into a lot tonight, where we spend time to buy things in order to spend time to maintain those things, in order to spend time to make money, to maintain and store those things. And we're going to have storage units, got to have homes and garages and places that are big enough to hold all that stuff, and yet it's stuff that we really don't use that much. And so, really what is needed in life to really enjoy your life? You need good health. But yet what we do is we take and we don't focus on staying healthy, because we're out there working too hard and we don't have enough hours in a day to do everything because we're working so hard. So we ignore our health and doing the things that'll keep us healthy. Same thing with sleep. We end up having less sleep and not getting enough good sleep because of the life that we choose and create for ourselves. We choose and create that life. You can have a different life. Good food. Most people, they don't eat healthy. They don't eat good. I love food. And there's a lot of good food that's healthy for you. But most people don't eat a lot of good food that's healthy for them. They eat a lot of bad food. It may taste good. It may taste really good, but it's not healthy for you. And then what else we need is we need good sex. That's the 4 things, good health, good sleep, good food, and good sex. And yes, even good sex we end up sacrificing because of our life choices that we make. You can start today to make different choices. Now, true, that doesn't mean that because I want to make $1 million. That doesn't mean I'm going to have it tomorrow or next month or even next year. That means that just like when I transitioned my monogamous relationship into non-monogamy, it took me 2 years to make that transition. And right now I'm transitioning my income from being where I trade time for dollars to where I have a sustainable online income that's a passive income, not taking a lot of time to make a good amount of money. And so that kind of a passive income, then it's going to take me some time to create that. And I'm going through that transition now. And it's not only a transition, it's a transformation. I'll get to that in a moment here. And so added to the processes that we are specially trained and certified in, Kat and I, through conversations that we had, we're always kind of just talking about things in our brain, what have you. And then sometimes we get a hold of something and we just start talking, and we end up having just amazing conversations of which brilliance comes out of. And you have those same brilliant seeds in you. You just have to nurture them. You have to, first of all, let them come out, nurture them and water them and allow them to develop, and suddenly you come out with brilliant things yourself. So one of the brilliant things that we've come out with is a 3-step process that is our own, that forms the foundation to helping people create the life they love the most. Our process is what we learn from the combined experience of over 100 years on the journey that Kat and I have had in our lives. So those three steps, and I talked about this last week, but I didn't really go into defining it well enough, I didn't think. So I really wanted to bring it back this week. And those 3 steps, the first step is the reframing step. And that is gathering information and knowledge, which enables you to make a mental shift in what and how you think about something, starting with letting go of your past and how things need to be and how things are, so that you can create something new. And I gave some examples of that in last week's video. And so if you didn't get a chance to see that, go back and catch last week's video from last Monday, and you'll be able to pick up the examples that I gave. But I'm not going to go into examples tonight. I just want to make it much clearer. And so you mix what I'm saying here with the examples from last week, and then you'll start to understand then these 3 steps and how to apply these in your own life. And so whether you're transitioning from monogamy to non-monogamy, or whatever it is that you are really working on in your life, then these are the 3 steps. The reframing step is step 1. The step 2 is the transformation. Instead of the bullets, I should have had 1, 2, and 3 on this. So maybe I'll go ahead and just change that now real quick here. That's better. So the reframing step, the second step, number 2, the transformation step. You see, that's actually letting go of the past. And sometimes people have a really hard time with that because the past is all locked there in our subconscious mind. And that's where we, through these processes that we can work with you on, that we help you to be able to easily let go of the past. But the transformation step is the actual letting go of past knowledge and ideas which limit you to change how you see yourself and who you are. Without this, you can only ever have the same life you have now. You see, it's like, how do you expect a different result from doing the same thing and being the same person? You can't. And so transformation happens when you create a new identity in your own mind of who you want to be or what you want in life. And so that's the transformation step. And then once you get to the transformation step, then it comes the liberation step. The liberation step is the transition part. You see, the transition part then is, and I think I'll go ahead and put that right on in here. Transition is taking specific steps and actions which liberate you from your past and take you to being who you desire to be from making an informed, knowledgeable choice based on exploration, discovery, and learning what brings you the greatest amount of satisfaction and pleasure in life at that particular moment. You see, one of the transitions that I've gone through, or one of the, and I've become liberated at, and that is that I'm not bisexual because I'm not attracted, would not go on, and at least not right now, because our life is always a journey, a process of change. So maybe in the future I'll be bisexual. I don't know. But I certainly have been very straight in my life in the past, and in almost all my whole life, very straight. In fact, I just thought, ooh, that'd be terrible to have another man's cock in my mouth and things like that. I just couldn't imagine it, and maybe you're like that too. Maybe you get some homophobia, because I remember back in my Christian days where I went out and yes, I beat the drum of how homosexuality was wrong. And see, then I had to reframe my thoughts on homosexuality. And then I had to transform my life, go through a transformation process. And then Kat came into my life, and she's a bisexual. And watching her to be with another woman is magnificent. Oh, man, I wish you could see that. I mean, it is such beauty in motion to watch her and another woman be there naked in bed, loving on each other. Oh, and heavenly. And so you see, that got me to reframing myself a little bit. I started going through this reframing process, and in that reframing process, I started questioning, well, then why is it that most of the women that I've ever dated over the last 13 years, they enjoy how they taste? Like you get your fingers down there with all their juices and wetness and all, and then you take and say, hey, you want to taste? And most women say yes, because they like how they taste. And so, like, why is that? And yet guys, they go like, ooh, to think about tasting cum from another man, or even my own cum, no, yuck. And so this was a reframing process. And I started then to question, well, then why am I so straight? And am I actually limiting myself? Because what limitation brings to our lives is limitation brings a decrease in the pleasure and satisfaction that we have in our lives. Is that what I want? I want less satisfaction and pleasure in my life? No, I want more satisfaction and pleasure. So I have to allow myself to reframe, transform, and liberate myself so that in that process, I can find what really is going to provide me with the greatest amount of satisfaction and pleasure. If you don't even open yourself up to that, because where you are in your conscious mind, like I was, totally straight, and if you don't at least open yourself up to exploring and discovering, then you're missing out on really experiencing a lot more satisfaction and pleasure that you could have in life. And so the liberation step in my life started to then come where I started asking myself in the transformation step, started asking myself, well, then, maybe I'd like to see what it is. Why is it that women seem to really like to have a cock in their mouth? Maybe I should find out. And so other bisexual men and gay men, they like having cocks in their mouth. So I shouldn't just close the door on that. I should allow myself to explore my options and then decide whether it's something for me or not. And so I told Kath, I says, I think that when we have the right opportunity with the right person, or there's a guy that we're playing with or a couple, then part of that's a guy. Just a moment. I said, I think that I'd at least like to try to take and see what it's like having his cock in my mouth. And so when I did that, I found out that I enjoy the texture and the feel. And there's a lot of things. I won't go into all the details, but there's a lot of things that I really enjoyed. And some time went by and I was thinking, I'd like to try that again. So I tried it again. And over a period of, this is my transformation here. Over the period of I'd say 4 years, that I finally got to a place of like, I actually desire to be able to not be where I have to have male on male play. And I would not be interested in just playing with a man. It's only when I'm really also involved with being able to have sex with a woman. That's the only time that I am really interested in enjoying another man. And besides, it turns Kat on no end. Won't go into the details there, but boy, she gets turned on. And so I found that I really enjoy, and so I'm not bi, but I am heteroflexible. Heteroflexible to the point that I come to a place during this pandemic of really sorting through things. And this is where I'm at just now during this pandemic, where I have begun to liberate my life, where now in moving forward, I really only want to play with couples who are bisexual or with single men who are bisexual. And then if it's a couple, both the woman and the man are bisexual or at least heteroflexible, so that they would enjoy having sex with us without any hangups as to who's pleasuring who and who's doing what to who. It's all about increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in one another's life, which is really what the whole lovely act of sex with other people should be about. And so I've gone through these steps here, and I'll continue going through these steps. I'm going through these steps with my business stuff as well, and I bring these reports to you every week. And so let's go on into the report now. And that is that, first of all, the overriding desire is to create an online income of $5,000 per month. Create an online non-monogamous relationship academy. Those are the two things that we're working to create right now. And then last week's focus. And I know this is getting long, so I'm kind of rushing through this. And do I give myself a pass or a fail? Well, one focus was week 4 out of 12 of my magnetic mindset certification training with my mentor, and keeping up with that material. And so I give myself a pass on that. Then it was building my online store, thehomenudist.com. You can go there right now if you like, and you'll find that homenudist.com. I've got 499 products in there right now for you. Now the store is, I don't even know how it got there. When you first go to the store, thehomenudist.com, the front page is all about dogs, and I don't know how those photos got there, but we're going to be getting rid of those in the next week or two. And then if you click on categories or something like that, then right now all of my products, the 499 products, are in different categories. And I put the categories in, but the categories are not showing up. But if you click on products, you'll see all 499 products show up. In fact, before the end of this week, I'm going to have at least another 1,000 products in there. And so I'm continuing to work on that. I'm really excited about the progress. On Thursday and also on Friday, I have a one-on-one coaching session with an individual who is going to help answer all my questions. And like, for instance, how do I change these photos? I don't want dogs there. I want things that are going to reflect something about the home nudist, and so even though, yes, we also have pet products, because one of the categories is your naked pet. And so, we have pet products as well in our store. And because, a lot of people have naked pets. And so, no, we do not sell clothes for your naked pet. I'm opposed to clothes. I'd like to be naked more myself. And so why sell clothes for your pet? And so we got lots of products for you and lots of products or some products for your pet as well. But and so in time, it'll be all listed out in categories. So it'll be really easy to go in there and access things very quickly and very easily. And both on Thursday and Friday, then also next Monday, I have a one-on-one appointment with a guy who's going to help me to make everything look exactly how I want to with all the products I've got in there. And I'm just really excited about how that's coming along. And it's interesting because then the next step after we get all the website completely set up the way I want it, then the next step after that is when it's looking like I want it to look, when it's got all the products in it that I want it to have, then the next step after that is what's called driving traffic. And that is just getting a flood of people to go to that website. And there's a number of ways that we have to do that. And the people that are coaching me on this and guiding me, again, I'll be tapping into them, and they're going to be giving me one-on-one help with that. Also, I've got probably about, I'm going to just say about 60 hours of training videos that I can go through that helps me with all this as well. And so I'll be going through all of those things in developing this site. So then we start driving traffic. And then once that is done, when everything all set up, then it becomes something that's all done on autopilot. In other words, people are traveling there to my website, and they're able to look at the different products on my website. Other times people are seeing me on Google stores, another time on Facebook stores, another time on eBay. In fact, that's one of the things this week I hope to get done. I don't know if I'll get it done this week or not, but that is to start setting up my eBay store with the products that are on my website, and then Walmart through Walmart.com. And so that's another place where these are all places that like eBay, for instance, there's I think that I learned in the call today I had that there's something like 600 million people every month that go to eBay and look for things to buy. And so those are people that are already coming to that site. And so all I have to do is to have things that they want to buy, and that's going to lead them right over to me and to my website. And so then once they either click on something, where then there's a thing on I've learned how to do is called social retargeting. And that's like if you've ever been to Amazon, where you take a look at a product, but then you don't buy it. And then for the next week, that follows you around the internet. Whenever you open up your computer on the internet, there's that product. And that's called social retargeting. And I've learned how to do that. And so then I can social retarget people with my products because it's very effective and very, very cheap to do that. And so then I get that all set up. So then all these things end up being set up on autopilot. And I'm going to have somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 products is just my guess in my online store. And so can you imagine, out of all those products and people that are coming to my online store, can you imagine what would it take to make, say $1,000 a month? Is that very doable? Now I'm talking about $1,000 in profit. Yeah, it's extremely doable. And so my goal to create this online income of $5,000 a month, that's just kind of where then at that point, it's a set it and forget it deal. I'll hire what's called a virtual assistant in the Philippines that I pay that person then starting out about $300 a month, and then give them incentives in order so that they can make $1,000 a month. And to take our websites. And we're going to create, decided we're going to create 7 stores online. And the first one is homenudist.com, and there will be other stores with different names and different products in them. So I'm going to create a total of 7 stores. I've got over almost 500,000 products in which I can choose from. And then how this works then is that when all that traffic is going to the store, then when someone places an order, then I get a little report in my email box and says, hey, this person just placed this order. However, also the company that fulfills that order for me, in other words, they take and have the product in inventory. That company is in the United States with that product in their inventory, and they pull it off their shelf, they box it up, and they ship it off to the customer. And then this whole website program then sends that company their money, and they send me my profit. And that's how the whole thing works. So it's like a set it and forget it. And so I'm going to create 7 stores. And I have no idea what's possible with all this. Whether I can make $1,000 per store is very doable. I think I make probably $2,000 to $5,000 or even $10,000 per store. I have no idea. But it takes time to keep working on your store, and that's why I hire the virtual assistant. Eventually, then once I get to $5,000 a month, I'm going to turn this all over to the virtual assistant and just say, you build it to $10,000 a month, and there'll be steps along the way that when you get to this amount, then we're going to give you a raise to $400 a month, and a raise to $500 a month, and then a raise to $600 a month, all the way up to a raise of $1,000 a month. Now, $1,000 a month in the Philippines, that's like professional level dentist and doctor pay, and so that's a lot of money. And the person is doing really well when they're in the Philippines, when they're making $1,000 a month. And I'll train them. Doesn't have to be anybody with much experience, skill, and knowledge to begin with. And so then they're going to be off and running. And so that's how that works. And so I give myself a pass on building my online store. The next thing is get a favorable resolution on my Allstate insurance lawsuit. And, I couldn't have asked for things to have gone better. My hearing was last Friday, and now basically it's in the court's hands now. They've got 14 days to issue their decision and then make a ruling. My attorney and I both feel, we could not have possibly asked for everything to have gone better. And even at the very end, the final comments from the court were that one comment to me is that my attorney is doing an amazing job advocating for me on my behalf with all this, and that I myself did a stellar job at creating clarity to all the questions that everybody had. There was no ambiguity or fog or uncertainty or doubt left in the minds that were there. And so I feel really good about that. But in this situation, though, Allstate has got a reputation. It took me a year to find an attorney that would take them to court, because most attorneys that will take Allstate on with Allstate's reputation, all they'll do is they'll go for a fast and cheap settlement for me and help me get that. That's all they would do. And so I finally found an attorney that would take Allstate on. And because you see now, this accident happened 4 years ago, and 4 years ago last month, in fact. And so with that, most likely, because it's Allstate's, it's their reputation. They create delays and don't pay money out, and it's a terrible thing that they do. And so that's their reputation. Unless you take and just accept their fast, quick, lowball settlement. I mean, yeah, and they offered me $11,000. My medical bills were more than what they offered me. And so that doesn't even cover medical bills, And so anyway, so getting a favorable resolution, I expect that the judge will come back with a favorable resolution on this. But then what's going to happen is that Allstate, as I expect Allstate, if they follow along with what they traditionally do, they are going to appeal it and want to take it to a jury hearing, jury court, jury trial. And what that does, it creates another 2 to 4 year delay. And then usually what they try to do is they then will come back at some point and say, hey, we'll go ahead and just settle this with you. And they offer a settlement for less than what I was just offered by, the last hearing process, what I got awarded in that hearing process. They'll come back and say, well, we'll settle this with you if you accept this amount, and we won't go to and drag this thing out for another 2 to 4 years by going to a jury. Well, that's what they do. But no, I'm not going to settle. My attorney and I, we both have talked about this, and we are ready to go to a jury if that needs to be. And so the other thing that would be a possibility here would be that Allstate, when they saw, because Allstate was just there with their attorney. There was nobody from Allstate there, but they're going to get a recording, a videotape of everything, because it's all done through Zoom. And so they're going to get that videotape, and when they look at that, they may then just stop and think, "Wow, I don't think we want to have this attorney and that person go before a jury, because we have such clarity about what we present, and we present it so well. And they've already admitted fault in the accident." And their defendant is admitted fault. It was their fault, and so they could be at a place where they just say, yeah, I think we better be smart and not go to a jury, and they could just go ahead and pay us a check. But that rarely ever happens with Allstate. And that's why most attorneys won't even take on Allstate unless the client is willing to just accept a very low settlement offer. But I'm not, and I found a good attorney, and so we'll just see where this goes, and I'll keep you updated on that. So accomplishments. Well, I forgot to even fill any of this in, and since we've gone so long now, I'm going to just skip over accomplishments from last week. Kind of mentioned the biggest one is to get in the 499 products in my store, the things I'm working on there. Breakdowns and breakthroughs. I didn't even update that as well, and so we're going to skip through that, and we'll get right here to the focus for this coming week. And then the one focus is to build my online store, thehomenudist.com. And then the other focus is week 5 of 12 of my magnetic mindset certification training. Now, going back to the homenudist.com, there's a lot of different stores I could pick. I could pick anything I wanted to. I got almost 500,000 products to choose from and all. And I can pick anything that I want as far as a store to put in that store, and then call the store anything I want. But you see, now with all this COVID-19 thing, people are spending more time at home than ever before. And so one of the niches that I'm going to tap into are home nudists, because part of our process here is that when I tap into that traffic, I'll be sending home nudists to my websites and all. And when I tap into that traffic, then I'm going to end up, when they, for instance, make a purchase and all, and I'm going to capture email addresses. And then I create an ongoing relationship with them. And creating that ongoing relationship, then I'm able to help to them because some nudists live ethically and consensually non-monogamous life, and some do not. And over the years, my 13 years in non-monogamy, I've talked to a lot of nudists that, it's kind of like it's on their mind. They just haven't gone there yet. And so kind of one of my desires here is to help home nudists, or nudists in general, but to help nudists to be able to take and make that transition to living a thriving, ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. And so I figured the home nudist would be a good place to start, because a lot of people are home now, and I can tap in to all those home nudists out there and start driving that traffic to my website. And so that's why I chose that one to start with. There are others on the other sites that I'll be building. Like I said, I'm going to build 7 sites, and they're going to be wonderful, great sites. Once I turn everything over to a virtual assistant in the Philippines, then it'll be their job full time to not only then to continue building the 7 sites that I created, but then also I'll give them all the training materials, because it's all recorded online for them. And so I'll give them all the training materials, give them access to the coaching, just like I have the access to, and like my call on Thursday and Friday and next Monday. They'll have all of the same thing, so that they can go and create stores for me as well. And their goal then will be to create one new store each and every month after they get through their training, and create one new store each and every month. And then we'll hire new virtual assistants that'll help to work with the stores as well, because after a while there gets to be too much work for just one person. And so I hope to have then, just a whole bunch of people in the Philippines working on creating these stores, and who knows where this can go. I was in a meeting last week with a guy that makes over $10 million a year from his online stores. And he was teaching a group of us, and I was really excited about hearing what he had to say. And so thank you very much for hearing what I had to say tonight. I know I went long. I haven't ever gone this long before. It's an hour and 4 minutes, but I appreciate your being here. I hope I had something to say that was of use to you. And so thank you very much. Have a great evening.